talk about, and I wanted to make a video about, is the what I'm calling the Judeo-Sufi tradition, and what a number of noted scholars of the medieval period of Judaism have called Judeo-Sufism, and I like the term, and I'm sticking with it. One key individual that comes up a lot is Maimonides, or the Rambam. He, I don't think you could classify as Judeo-Sufi. He was very influenced by Islam, and also very critical of the Muslim world. Much of what he wrote, including his 13 principles, things of that nature, are responding to Islamic theology. And in some ways it's quite parallel. In other ways it's criticizing the theology prevalent in the Muslim world, and he definitely has some issues with that. Now, from the outset, I'm going to state that I absolutely reject what later emerged, that was attributed to him, that I consider pseudo-epigraphical, the Epistle to Yemen. There are a number of problems with it. One being that the person in it who is purported to be him contradicts what he says in the Mishnah Torah about the non-supernatural nature of Mashiach. In the Epistle to Yemen, the person who is it's being said is him, talks about Mashiach as being the supernatural sort of Christian Christ figure. This is diametrically opposed to what he writes in the Mishnah Torah. That's one example. It's also the only place that we see him really talking in a very sort of mean-spirited way about Muhammad, or about the roots of Islamic tradition, as opposed to what's going on in the Muslim world. It's highly unlikely that a person in his position would have, even if he thought these sorts of things, even written them. But what makes it increasingly more unlikely, as we come over here, is that his son, Abraham, this is a new edition of what's called in Arabic Kifayat al-Abidin. It was written in Judeo-Arabic, like much of the literature at the time. But his son was actually a noted Judeo-Sufi, so much so that he led the entire Egyptian community that followed him, Jewish community, in Salat. He reclaimed it. He said, "This is the Sufis are practicing the ancient traditions of the children of Israel. They didn't make this up. I don't need to be on the defensive, and we Judeo-Sufis don't need to be on the defensive for engaging in these things that you're saying were made up by the Arab world. This isn't the case. And in fact," he says, "the Jewish world should be ashamed of themselves for having abandoned this tradition, these traditions, when even people who this isn't necessarily their ancient heritage have now picked up these traditions. They're doing them, we're not doing them. So thus, henceforth we're doing them as the Egyptian Judeo-Sufi community." He also, as you see, people refer to him as Rabbeinu, our rabbi. There's a new translation. There's a 2-volume set published in the 20s and 30s that is even better. This was, of course, before a lot of the drama between the neo-Salafi Wahhabism and Jews. So publishers weren't afraid to put the Judeo-Arabic and work from that and talk directly about Sufism, and so on and so forth. This new one has been a little more Hebraicized. The author even admits that he's not working from the Judeo-Arabic. He doesn't know Judeo-Arabic. So I have some problems with this, but this is all you're going to find in print. These are ones that I requested through the library, through the university library. If you can get your hands on them, you should do it. In any event, talked about the term Rabbeinu and how it's attributed to the Rambam's son. And, of course, in addition to that, I guess before I get on, we should also mention his son, who was even more overtly Judeo-Sufi, who didn't, mince any words about it. The Treatise on the Pool is an excellent, excellent book. You can find this in new translation or in new editions by Paul Fenton. Excellent book. I highly recommend this to any serious Jew or to any serious Sufi. Now, while what he does in there is he will use Sufi terminology throughout. It's very overtly Sufi in nature, but he's using all Jewish sources. Something that we find predating both him, his father, and his grandfather, the Rambam, is the duties of the heart. Al-Hidayah ila Fara'id al-Qulub. It's also known in Hebrew as Chovot ha-Levavot. And in Orthodox Yeshiva, you're going to study the Hebrew translation. And the Hebrew translation sort of neuters a lot of the Sufi terminology. So this predates all of that, in some ways led to that. Again, this is Rabbeinu Bachya. This is the rabbi of all of Jewry. These aren't marginal figures. These are significant people. So you study this book in the Hebrew translation to become, an Orthodox rabbi. Why not study it in its original language and really understand what the author was talking about? Now, in here, he is using Sufi terminology, obviously using Arabic, Judeo-Arabic. But not only is he doing that, he's also quoting ahadith that are attributed to Muhammad and Ali. The author, the translator here, Menachem Mansour, erroneously ascribes one of the hadith to Muawiyah, and he's just simply not familiar enough with the Islamic tradition to understand why that's ridiculous. But he's done a great work, so I'm not really criticizing him. He's just wrong. And I've written a paper that you can find on New Dawn at newdawn.dharmahost.biz. Written a paper on this work. It was my honors thesis a while back. And it actually correctly identifies the hadith that he wrongly associates with Muawiyah. It, again, is attributed to Ali. So this is a very Judeo-Sufi work. It calls Muhammad and it calls Ali. It refers to them with the word chesed. And the term chesed didn't come from the Baal Shem Tov. It didn't come from the movement, the modern movement of Chassidut. It came from the Judeo-Sufis. It was the term used for Judeo-Sufis. This movement, this Jewish pietist movement, was known as Hasidic. So in reclaiming that, in reclaiming our understanding of Jewish history, we have to look back. We have to look back before this sort of postmodern Jews hate Arabs and Arabs hate Jews mentality. And, no offense, I'm glad this guy put this out. But we have to draw from the sources he doesn't draw from. We have to go back and remember what's been flushed down the memory chute, that this comes from Judeo-Arabic. This comes from authors who understood themselves as Judeo-Sufi. And yet they're universally recognized as some of the greatest minds in Judaism.